This week in Israel, we read Parshat Pinchas, and in it, it contains one of my all-time favorite stories, and that is the daughters of Zelophchad, Benot Zelophchad. Now, we're at the point where the nation is about to enter the promised land, and the land will be divided amongst the 12 tribes. Each tribe gets a different portion in the land. And it goes according to sons, not daughters. Now, the Benot Zelophchad were devastated because their father had passed, and there were only five girls. They were five women, and they weren't going to inherit the land, and therefore they couldn't perpetuate their father's name. So they went through the court system all the way up to the Supreme Court because they didn't get the answer that they needed. They came to Moshe and they said to Moshe, Moshe, our father died not from the sin of Korach, and it was important for them to point that out because Korach's sin was antagonistic towards Moshe, was rebellious, but he died from his own sin, and he didn't have any sons, and why should his name not be perpetuated just because he doesn't have sons? Please give us an inheritance amongst our brothers in the tribe of the Manasseh so we can perpetuate the name of our father. And Moshe brought this very compelling argument to God, and God said, Kain debro benot Zelophchad. They speak correctly, give them an inheritance, and this is the law from now on. Father has no sons, it goes to the daughters. If there's no daughters, it goes on to tell us what happens. The closest family relative gets the inheritance. And I want to point out something that is really, I think, one of the reason why I just love this story so much, and that is that the Torah gives us hints to the greatness of these five women. First of all, it names them by name. It's Machla, Noah, Chagla, Milcah, and Tirzah. And it tells us their name not just once, it tells us their name a few different times. And each time it tells us name, it changes the order. Now, the Meforshim, the commentaries tell us that the reason why it changes its order is because to show us that they were all equally important, that they were all these great women and not one was more important than the other. And I want to first read you, and I want to tell you what I think that really means. But first I want to read you how it opens up with the story and discuss it. Vatikravna benot Zelophchad ben Chefer ben Gilad ben Machir ben Menashe mishpachot Menashe ben Yosef ve'el shmot benotav Machla, Noah, Chagla, Milcah, v'Tirzah. Okay, so this tells us that the daughters of Zelophchad, and then it tells us the lineage all the way back to Yosef, and that they were going to come to stand before Moshe and Elazar to bring the case. Now, Rashi tells us that the reason why it traces the lineage all the way back to Yosef is because Yosef really loved the land, and to show that he passed that love of the land on all the way down the generations to these five women. And obviously that's true, but I want to point out something else that I think is so compelling. And the reason why also I think it shows us something that was passed on from Yosef all the way to each of these five women. And if we look at the character of Yosef, Yosef was one who it was so important to him to be one of the brothers. When Yaakov sent him to go in search of the brothers to see how they were doing, to go to Shechem and see what they were doing, and he went and he, was fumbling in the field, he couldn't find them, and the angel came and said, "What are you in search for?" He says, "I'm in search. I'm with my brothers that I request that I'm looking for." And my Rabbi Arakan, likes to point out, I heard in a shiur of his, that he just wanted to be one of the brothers. He wanted that brother connection, and that the brothers, they didn't feel that they hated him, as we were told before the story began. And then we know because he got thrown into the pit with the jealousy. And then we see this throughout, that he just wanted to be one of the brothers after he became um, the head in Mitzrayim, determining all the food and who's going to go to and how. And he had finally exposed himself to his brothers. He could have just supported them, giving them enough food to live where they were living in Canaan the rest of the time. But he said, come live next to me. He wanted them all together, all around him. He wanted to keep that family. He just wanted to be one of the family. And then we see it even again when Yaakov died, and the brothers said, oh no, now Yosef's going to want to kill us because, he's only didn't do anything to us because he didn't want to upset our father. Now that our father is dead, we have to worry again. And when Yosef realized that, he was devastated. He cried. It tore him apart that even at that point, the brothers did not consider him one of them who cares and loves and just wants the best for his brothers. And he just wanted that his whole life. And then you see that with his own nuclear family, how he really harnessed and he really made sure to have that close bond with his own family. And the Pesukim tell us that because it tells us at the end of his death that he raised 3 generations through Ephraim, and he even raised the sons of Manasseh on his own knees. And here it tells us all the sons of Machir, who was the sons of Manasseh, on his own knees. It tells through the generations. So we know that he had a close bond with not just his children, his grandchildren, his great-grandchildren. He kept them close. They were bouncing on his thigh. You kept them around. And he had an important job, Yosef, but the family didn't suffer from it. He kept them close, and he passed on this love of family. And how do we know he passed on this love of family? Because his 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, when Yosef brought them to Yaakov for a blessing, and Manasseh is the older and Ephraim is younger, and Yaakov was about to give the blessing for the elder to Ephraim, who was the younger. This really upset Yosef, and he's tried to say something, and Yaakov's like, no, and he gave the blessing for the firstborn to Ephraim, which is a much superior blessing. We're told that Manasseh was happy. The fact that it was meant for him, the better blessing, and his younger brother got it, I think in most families that would cause major hatred and dissension, but not here. Here he was loved and he's happy for his brother. Because it was good for his brother, was good for him just as well. And he knew he was still going to have good. So if his brother has better, he was happy for that. And that's why we bless our boys every week to be, or whenever we bless them, to be like Ephraim and Manasseh, to have that close bond that they only want the better for each other. They love and care for the other more than they care for themselves. And this is what we see. And I think this is the reason why we're also told the daughters, the different names of the 5 daughters of Zelophchad in different orders, is, as I said before, that not one was more important than the other, but not that in status, but not one was more important than the other to themselves. In their family itself, they treated each other as equal. They loved each other all the same, not depending on who came first or who got what or who was like this or that. They all treated each other as equal. We're one family. We love each other. We care for another, and they stuck together. And we see that they cared so much about family because they wanted to perpetuate their father's name. So we see that they cared about their nuclear family. We care about their past generations. They care about the future generations to have a nachla, to have an inheritance, to pass on that father's name to the future generations. They should have an identity, who they were, where they came from. And this was what's so powerful about these women. And this is why they get named several times within the Torah. And I think we have to learn from them to cultivate our family bonds and to look beyond our differences and to care and to understand that when something good happens to our brother, to our sister, it's good for everybody. It works for everybody. And to always care about where you came from and where you're going and how to pass on the best for the future generations. And this is part of why I love the story so much. These women are an inspiration to me, and I think about them when I raise my own family. And I hope we can all pass that knowledge of that importance and significance onto the people that we know and the people that we care about. Family is not just blood sometimes. Family, caring about the people who raised you, where you came from and where you're going is very, very significant. To have that hakarat tov, to have that acknowledgement, appreciation, gratitude for the good, and as they say, today's pay it forward. Shabbat shalom.